good morning, good afternoon, good evening. However you're watching, wherever you're watching, however you listen, wherever you listen. It's the Bet Online Salute to Troy podcast. The three are here. The bearded bandits are back. Jamal told me he just shaved 10 minutes.
Just shaved and just got a haircut, so both.
There you go. 10 minutes before the show. So see how fast it's growing. I'm in between right now. I don't know. Because at my new job, both the leads of the office have really nice beards. So I'm like, beards are acceptable. So I'm like, do I shave again or do I go with the beard? So I'm scruffing it right now till I figure it out. Ryan is always going to be Ryan. So the bearded bandits may be back, Ryan. I don't know. I miss my beard. I really liked it. So we'll decide.
In honor of Caleb Williams, you need the full beard again since he's growing his out.
Yeah, he needs a comb though. Needs a little bit of grooming. Today, big day at Allison Felix Field, right? Is it Allison Felix track? Which one is it?
I think
you guys are leaving me hanging here.
No. Okay. I think it's field. It's
field.
So I know Looker still has some part of it. Is it Looker Stadium and Allison Felix Field?
I think so. Yep. That's right.
That sounds right. Let me see.
Ryan is checking right now. Ryan's checking. While Ryan checks, Pro Day happened.
It's Allison Felix Field at Catherine B. Locker Stadium.
There we go. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Pro Day happened. We had 4 boots on the ground today at Pro Day. We had the Madman and the CEO himself, Ryan Root. I wasn't there. I got to pay for daycare, so I couldn't afford to miss today. And it's too soon for me to work from home. So I had to take care of it. But great day. We'll go down the list again. Ryan, this has been dubbed the draft series because, this has been talked about for 3 shows now. So I guess we're following these guys to April. April comes and then we have to flip a coin again. But Pro Day happened. From what you guys were telling me, it was the Caleb Williams show. So we'll touch on Caleb Williams. But let's talk about some guys today. We'll talk about 2 guys who had good workouts that weren't invited to the combine. And then we'll just touch on Brenden Rice, Calen Bullock. We'll touch Brenden Rice, Calen Bullock, Marshawn Lloyd, and Taj Washington. Can't forget Taj. Ryan will fire me if we forgot Taj. Can't forget Taj. So touch on those guys because those are the guys whose stock is rising right now. It's like Fisker before the car hits the street. So we'll touch on those guys.
Fisker. Don't curse him like that. Fisker's about to go bankrupt. Didn't
think that would make it into the pod. Well done.
Yeah.
and then we'll touch on the star attraction. We'll touch on Caleb Williams. Let's talk about the 2 guys who did not go to Indianapolis. One of them is my favorite. Let's talk about my favorite first. Austin Jones was there. I'll throw it to you, Ryan. Austin Jones. We pulled his number. I'm going to pull his numbers up real quick. We have his numbers. Austin Jones measured at 5'9", 200 pounds. That's a good size running back. His wingspan is 70 inches. He ran a 4.5, which is about right because we knew he wasn't a speedster. But that's a good time, I think, for Austin Jones. Mm-hmm. Shuttle, 4.39. 3-cone was 7.02. Broad jump, 10. That's really good. So he showed some explosiveness. He showed he's faster than he comes on to be. Drill-wise, I'm just looking at the numbers. But drill-wise, Ryan, how did Austin Jones look drill-wise? How did he look in Pro Day?
Yeah, Jamal and I were talking about it a bunch. He definitely looked explosive and had a quicker burst than what sometimes you see maybe on the field. And, some of that might be some of the training that he's been doing. He was rocking the very tight lower booty shorts with no shirt, but was looking chiseled. Al, you would have liked him even more, I'm sure, if you were there seeing the off-season training. But no, thought it looked good. Yeah, I think with Jones, what's going to be so interesting is he was really productive throughout his college career, even with lack of reps. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but he finished with over 2,000 yards rushing for his career, averaged like 5.4 yards per carry. So the limited reps that he got, he did a lot with. And I think that's why you've obviously liked him so much, Al. But looked good. I thought the pro day, and he was in that first group that obviously, as we'll get to, everyone was anticipating the Caleb Williams, even Brenden Rice, Tahj, Marshawn, the second group. So he was in that first group and certainly kind of wowed from that group and was the main attraction for there. So I thought he did himself definitely some favors. And, will he be a 7th round pick? Probably not. Probably more of an UDFA, but I think he'll definitely be on a roster come training camp, and then he can prove himself from there. But what do you think, Jamal?
Yeah, no, I completely agree, Rye. I mean, you and I were chatting it up there that he looked really cut today. Like there was kind of significant body fat reduction, looked really lean, and he was just looking explosive. And, the 40 time was a 4.58. I'm not sure that kind of did justice to him real time because he really looked like he got a burst right out of the gate and was just moving very effortlessly. And as Ryan mentioned, the shorts were on nice and tight. There was some significant cuppage. I mean, he was suns out, guns out today for sure. Austin Jones, a lot of confidence. And he also ran some very nice routes for Caleb as part of his throwing session. So he was involved all the way around, but kind of a leaner, meaner, more explosive Austin Jones. And I couldn't agree more with Ryan. I think there's an opportunity for him to make an NFL roster. And honestly, when you're looking to be a 7th round pick, you'd rather be a UDFA than a 7th round pick because then you can sort of pick your spot of team where they're sort of lacking in the positional department that you're in. So I think he's going to be very strategic. But I think he rolled some eyes today for sure for those that were care to be looking. So I think there's a nice win here for Austin Jones.
Al, remind our good people why you love Austin Jones. Be his agent right now for the agents or for the scouts listening to the Salute Troy podcast.
So the selling point for Austin Jones is he's a true between the tackles runner, right? He's always falls forward. There's never a time where you really think of Austin Jones falling backwards. He's a plus yard. He'll get his shoulder square to the line of scrimmage and get you at least a yard and keep you ahead of the chains. The thing that sold me on Austin Jones was when Travis Dye had that serious injury, and I said, Lincoln Riley's only going to run power. And this was 2 years ago when Phil and I was telling him he's only going to run power. And if you remember, after Travis Dye went down, SC's running game was the power. Austin Jones picked up the slack like there was no loss in the offense at all. So I feel like I know he's not a starter. He's not going to be your number one back. But Harbaugh, Chargers, gap scheme guy. Dan. Come on, in Detroit. What's Dan's last name?
Dan Campbell.
Dan Campbell. Power scheme, any type of gap scheme.
Hey, the Rams are running gap scheme now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's a perfect second option for a gap scheme. Not only that, he could catch out the backfield. He'll stick his nose in there to pass block. He's not going to be your flashy guy. He can be a journeyman in the NFL for a long time, but he's a good second option and a solid fit. If your running back goes down, he's an excellent Band-Aid for 2 or 3 games. And in SC's case, it was another 5 games, right? So that's why I like him. He's always a positive yard guy. So,
before we move on, who he kind of reminds me of, and you guys can call me crazy if you think so. And obviously he didn't match the production in college, but just in terms of size and style, like he kind of reminds me of Zach Moss a little bit, former Utah back and, played in Buffalo and he was a free agent this year. I can't remember where he signed, but same thing when you say Al just falls forward and is always going to get you're never going to lose yards. That kind of reminds me of Zach Moss, who, I think went in the middle rounds. Not saying Jones will do that, but just, similar style.
Yeah. So that's my selling point. And if his agent's smart, that would be the same selling point for the agent. So there you go. Moving on, I want to take a look at this guy. I'm a big fan of this guy too. I think he's a Trojan through and through. I commend him for playing in the Holiday Bowl. He had an excellent game in the Holiday Bowl. Let's talk about Max Williams. So Max Williams, he only measured at 5'8" and a quarter. Not a quarter, a fourth. I'm sorry. He measured at 5'8" and a fourth. He's 181. Yeah, okay, I'm just making sure. 3/4 a quarter. Yeah. 25, 50, 75. That's how I have to do that work. Don't get on me too hard, guys.
Yeah, I'm terrible at math, so you're not allowed.
181 was his weight. Didn't run fast, ran a 4.6, but he showed he was strong. 14 bench reps, 7.2 3 cone. So 9.1, okay explosiveness. Not very tall. But I think he's a player, man. He just has like something to him that makes him be a player. Where does he fit in the NFL, Jamal? Like we talked about the other day. I don't know. This is really not. It's okay. It's not him, but when you think of this is a Bob Sanders body type, right? Bob Sanders was maybe a little bit bigger, but Bob Sanders didn't last long in the NFL because he was always hurt. But man, I really like this kid, and I just love him because he is a true Trojan. But I think the numbers are going to kill him. I just hope he fits somewhere. How did Max Williams look today in his drills and everything like that? We'll kick it to Jamal first.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned Max Williams because the secondary did some drills, with live ball action where, they were kind of doing some press coverage and then they would retreat back to kind of go back to center field and make a play on the ball. And Max Williams probably had the second best play of the day today where, he sort of bumped and then retreated all the way back and made a diving catch probably 50 yards from the line of scrimmage. And much to sort of the appreciation and roar of the crowd, the 100-some that were there in attendance. So he actually showed some pretty nice ball skills and an ability to sort of retreat to the ball, head down, be able to sort of accelerate to the ball, and then be able to identify the ball in the air from a compromised position, which was really, I think, one of the big concerns with Max Williams, particularly the way he looked in that Oregon game towards the end of the season. And so I think there was a lot that he did from that Oregon game up until today that showed a lot of improvement. Now, has he closed the gap enough to be a draft prospect? That remains to be seen. Probably not, but I think you're looking at another UDFA that in the right circumstance can make an NFL roster.
Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah. I wanted to more of a question, I guess, Al. And you guys may have touched on this last episode that I missed. Do you see him as a safety at the next level, or more of like a nickel corner?
He could play nickel corner. I think he has the ability to cover. It'll be a teaching thing, but I think he has the ability to cover. But I think he's one of the guys that he has the ability to play both. Max, when you think about it too, Max played down in the box more than Calen. So Max Williams could play down. That's why I say when you think about it, it's Bob Sanders. Like, he's not athletically as gifted as Bob Sanders, but when you look at the prototype and the stature and the figure of a player like him, it's like Bob Sanders' body type and what he can do. So I can see him playing both.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like just body size type, like nickel might give him a good shot to make it. But yeah, good pro day for him. It's fun to see him out there. And like you said, a true Trojan, been here through, two different regimes, right? And stuck through it and a bunch of different changes and everything. And now his brother's on the team, who's hopefully gonna have a great career. Marcellus, me and Jamal were talking about that today out of St. John Bosco. So hopefully he'll carry the torch on. And he's a lot of hype around him, but obviously that's a total different story and podcast. So good day for Max, though.
Definitely. All right, let's for the sake of time, let's move to the star of the show. Number 13, Caleb Williams. Everybody wanted to see Caleb Williams come out. Caleb Williams did participate in Pro Day. Have no numbers. I mean, he's a trendsetter. Like, I believe Johnny Manziel did not run at his Pro Day either. Johnny Manziel came out, you remember, in the shoulder pads, and he wanted to show that he could throw in shoulder pads. I don't think Johnny ran either. I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's kind of a thing. But no numbers on Caleb. Caleb is all about watch me on film. I wasn't there. I did see some things. Keenan Allen was there, and he talked to Keenan Allen. I heard there was a bunch of Bears people there today. Ryan, how did Caleb do today? Hold on, Ryan, before you go, if you want to also know how Caleb did, there's a great article written on LAFB network.com, written by some author. I don't know. He just randomly showed up, but he put a great article out today. I think his name is Jamal Magdi. I'm not sure, but I'll go back and check it again. Put a great article out there. Went through all 55 of his throws. 55. All 55 of his throws and broke them down. So go check that out on the website. All right, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, and I'll let Jamal talk on it more. But it was obviously a day that was centered around him. That's what all the scouts were. Not all the scouts, obviously, they're looking at other things, but looking at other players and prospects as well, especially if they're not in the they're not the Bears because that's who's going to get him. But that was the talk of the town, right? And it was fun. He was very, in typical Caleb fashion, I thought just looked very relaxed and, he's ready for the spotlight in that regard. And, seeing him more, it was funny. Me and Jamal were talking. So guys are still going through drills on one half of the field. And then Caleb's just on the other half, just kind of like warming up. This is even before the receivers came over there. He's over there just like by himself, like just kind of like kicking the ball. We got a nice like victory photo of him, arms in the air. And all the scouts and stuff are just like over watching him, not even watching the guys doing drills. So today was about Caleb Williams. And I thought it was a lot of fun, but I'll let Jamal talk about his actual like throws and what he was, because I had to unfortunately step away. So I honestly didn't see a lot of them. So I'll let Jamal speak on this.
The self-esteem LAFB editor, author, whatever you want to be called today. You're the man, Jamal.
No. I mean, it was, first of all, I mean, it's always so fun to be out there in person with Ryan, and we had just a great time catching up with each other, with other folks in the media. Had some nice Randy's donuts and coffee and, all that good stuff. So great time as always to be with you, Ryan. And yeah, I mean, it's so funny that you mentioned that Fred, he was sort of throwing left-handed at the beginning. This is just sort of warming up and playing around, with the ball boys and bouncing the ball to people. He was even kicking it at one point. And, on the other side, you've got Brenden Rice running full speed through his drills. And 90% of the scouts are sort of just watching Caleb throw a ball left-handed and, kick a football versus watching a prospect like Brenden Rice kind of go full speed through his drills. So that sort of set the stage in terms of, who this was all about today. But, it was a very interesting pro day for Caleb. He had 55 throws. There were sort of throws in 4 buckets. He had 10 kind of warm-up throws, 5 fade routes on each side. Then he had 24 throws that you would characterize as check down throws and underneath throws that were kind of 10 yards or less, and different sort of route tree concepts, whether it was sort of inside slants or digs with receivers or backs out of the backfield. Then he had about 16 throws that would be characterized in that 10 to 20 yard range, that intermediate range where you're looking for a little bit more zip, but you're also looking for some touch. And then he had 5 balls that what you would characterize as kind of deep ball, air it out, go routes, sluggos, things of that nature. And so obviously he was super clean in terms of his 10 warm-up throws. The 24 underneath throws were very clean. I think his footwork was solid, but I don't necessarily think his footwork was particularly meticulous or masterful today. I think he was just kind of going through the motions. The underneath throws, the 16 throws, nothing hit the ground, but he had a couple of misses there. He was a little high and behind on one inside slant to Brenden Rice. Brenden Rice made a phenomenal play on it, and then he was a little bit behind on an out route to Tahj. Tahj made a phenomenal play on it, and then there was one play in particular, kind of an out route 20 yards, where Tahj kind of fingertipped it and tiptoed inbounds, and that was more of a sort of an applause for Tahj. So I think 13 of the 16 intermediate throws were really strong. 3 were slightly off target, but again, it's in shorts and you're, being guarded by air. So take that for what you will. And then he had the 5 deep balls. And I think this is where we probably had the most data to sort of go off of, where he actually only went 2 for 5 on the deep balls. So he actually overthrew Brenden a few times. And then a third ball kind of fluttered in the air a little bit long and kind of hung in the air. And so Tahj almost like overran it because it sort of hung in the air and tried to make this incredible kind of basket catch over the shoulder and just couldn't corral it in. But then Caleb ended the day in spectacular fashion, kind of aired it out, 60-yard ball in the air, got Brenden Rice in stride, and that was the final throw and the final play of the pro day, much to everyone's applause. So I think we walk out of here. Obviously, I think the way to characterize it, it was a low-risk, low-reward type of situation. When you're the presumptive number 1 pick in the draft, you really don't want to do anything kind of outside of the box because it's just, very low reward to very high risk at that point. And so even out of his 55 throws, I think he only scrambled out of the pocket once in the 55 throws, so they kind of just kept him in the pocket and just allowed him to kind of air it out. He didn't run a 40. So it was very structured and scripted. But I think we sort of go away with it much in the way that the 2 question marks to his game overall are downfield accuracy. And we've sort of said that now for 2 years. So it was kind of ironic that he only went 2 for 5 on the deep ball. And then we've always talked about kind of the mechanics of his footwork, whether that's sort of being able to stay on schedule or just kind of committing to the quality of his footwork from a mechanic standpoint. And both those things kind of showed up a little bit. But again, he didn't do anything that would sort of in any way jeopardize him being the number 1 overall pick. And there was a lot of references to the Bears most of the day. And he talked about even having a conversation with the Bears management earlier that morning. And the Bears kind of really just assessing, is he worth the time and the investment and the resources and the money and what have you. So you could tell there's a certain air of expectation, even from Caleb, that he's going to the Bears, I think, and he's starting to sort of accept that reality. Obviously, nothing is done until the draft actually happens, but he did everything that he needed to today, and I think overall it was a solid day. It wasn't necessarily a spectacular day. I think we remember like a Trevor Lawrence pro day or some other number 1 picks that just sort of jumped off the page. His was solid, not spectacular, but he's the number 1 pick without question.
Or you remember Zach Wilson, who became the number 2 pick because of his pro day.
Yeah, exactly. And we all know how that turned out.
Yeah, exactly.
So those of you listening in on the Mighty 1090, thank you for listening. If you want to continue watching, go to our podcast on YouTube, Salute to Troy, as I defend Caleb Williams on some of Jamal's analyzation. So I'm going to defend Caleb Williams on his long throws and his more intermediate throws. And the only flaw to your data, Jamal, is that they haven't thrown together in a long time, and the timing might have been off. Right? That's the only thing I could give you. Like, timing might have been off, right? I wasn't there, but if you said he went 2 for 5, if the first 3 throws were bad, I'm chalking that up to timing because the last 2 were good, right? I don't know the order it went in. I don't know how, but that's how you could chalk it up, is the timing was off. The most important thing that you needed to see, though, was the arm strength. Can he get the ball there? Was he able to get the ball there? And from what I'm hearing, you guys are saying, yeah, he was. It was no problem. My question to you guys is, those passes that were 10 to 20 yards, what was the zip like? Because the windows now in the NFL close a lot faster than the windows do in the college level. So what was his zip like on those 10 to 20-yard passes? Jamal Ryan, whatever. Go ahead.
Yeah, Coach, I think it was crisp. I mean, there was nothing really that you would say was overly a parabola or something of that nature. I think the ball got there when it needed to. I don't know if there was just so much zing on the ball. It didn't feel like a Rodgers ball, for instance, or a Dan Marino ball or a John Elway ball. I don't think it was sort of to that level of zip, but he could be also holding back. So I think it was crisp. Again, I think the 10 to 20 was very synonymous of his overall day. I think it was solid, but I wouldn't characterize it as spectacular.
Yeah, I'm interested to see on his visits what comes out from his visits, right? Because that's the one thing that the NFL does keep under wraps really tight, is that they just say it was a good visit, or there's some stuff that leaks out from a visit. I do know from like Deshaun, when he was telling me that he was on his visit, he went to his first visit and he didn't know that it was a workout. And they like doing some stuff, kind of caught him off guard, like, oh, I'm not ready to work out. Like, I kind of took a couple of weeks off after pro day getting ready. But I'm interested to see what comes from his visits, because will he run at his visits? That's a question. How does he interview? And does he really let it go when he throws? Like, does he really, you know what I mean? Like you said, it seemed like a little bit scripted to protect him, and he didn't want to show everything or overdo it. So I'm curious on his visits, if he goes out to his visits and he really lets it fly, because nobody's there to watch him. There's nothing that leaks. There's a lot of BS that's been leaking about him lately. And so I think he's handling, I don't know, you might disagree, but I think he's handling the media very well now. And that might be because he's trained now compared to when he first came out and how he did it in college. So I think he's handling it now. You guys got anything on that? Go ahead, Ryan.
I've got a question for you guys that we can talk to spice up, I guess, the conversation a little bit. So, the Bears, we know, are taking a quarterback now, trading Justin Fields. So no matter what, they're taking one. And as of now, we all know it's going to be Caleb Williams. But, I mean, there was also, Josh McCown was there from the Vikings who need a quarterback. Cliff, and I think there was 3 Washington Commander representatives there who are sitting at 2. It's going to take a lot to pry him away from the from the Bears. But to your point, Al, about visits, how do I want to phrase this? Like, I guess, do you think a lot of teams will still reach out for visits, or do you think they're more like, we have no shot, what's the point? And B, do you think a team like Washington or Minnesota, who would have to move up quite a bit from 11, but do you think they'll try to throw the kitchen sink at the Bears to go up and get him, or do we think it's a foregone conclusion? Bears are sticking at 1 and Caleb's in Chicago.
So my question to that would be, what was his response? And I think Jamal knows the answer. What was his response to when they asked him about talking to the Bears? Was it a coached response or like? And Jamal, you study body language. What was his body language like, and what was his response when mentioning talking to the Bears?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's been some body language analysis even on Twitter over the course of the day when he's gotten questions about the Bears from different media outlets. And one in particular was saying you can see sort of a subtle double head nod, like, I know that's where I'm going type of thing. He was very confident when he spoke about the Bears. It was probably his most fluent answer of any question that he got. Like, for instance, he got a question of, tell new recruits why they should come to USC. And, he talked about the weather, and he talked about other Olympic athletes, and he talked about great coaching staff and whatnot. But he kind of stumbled his way through that answer. When he got a question about the Bears, it was just like fluent. I mean, he was ready to answer about the Bears. And so I think he was very prepared in terms of his response from his team on, this is what you say when you talk about the Bears. But I think it was a situation, if you look at body language, that I think he accepts the reality that he will be drafted by the Bears. I think to Ryan's point, I think the number of visits that he's probably going to take are on one hand. I don't think there's any point in him taking more than that. And I think it's the Bears. I think it's the Commanders. I think it's potentially the Vikings and maybe one or two other teams that have the potential to give the Bears a boatload on defense to be able to move up and get that number 1 pick. So I think that's really the situation right now. But you have to believe that the Bears are going Caleb number 1, given the fact that they gave up on a 25-year-old who essentially broke the NFL record for single-season rushing yards by a quarterback just a year ago to be able to draft this guy.
The reason why I asked that question is to answer your question, Ryan, because I still believe he's about being a trendsetter. And I'm not saying this in a bad way. He's a generational talent. He has every right to be a trendsetter. Michael Jordan with the tennis shoes, right? Randy Moss, you got Moss, Kobe Bryant with the work ethic. Everybody who's a generational talent set some type of trend. I still believe that he'll balk on the Bears. And like we talked about the other night, Jamal, he has every right to. We just saw what they did to Justin Fields. The organization is not where you need to be to set him up to be successful in the future.
He's got Keenan Allen.
That's fine. But Keenan Allen hasn't played 17 games since he was at Fresno State. Right? Yeah. So, you get what I'm saying? Like, he
went to Cal, not Fresno State. But yeah,
Cal. But you know what I mean? Like, he hasn't played a full season. Like, I get the DeAndre Swift and all that. And like I told Jamal, there's still no defense. So is he going to go back to hero ball?
Not to argue, but just to push back, like, what other number
it's healthy discussion.
Of course. Like, what other top 5 pick team is in a better spot than the Bears are right now? I mean, the Bears won 7 games last year.
Yeah.
EJ Moore, Keenan Allen,
that's a great
DeAndre
point.
Swift. What other number 1 team with the number 1 pick has what they have? I mean, it's the best situation ever possibly for the number 1 pick.
It is the best situation on paper, 100%. But organization-wise, it is not the best situation.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know what I mean? Like, I understand what you're saying. Organizationally, it's not the best situation. Paper-wise, and what he has as far as tools, 100%. But we got to remember, we're setting him up to go back to USC 2023, right? So they'll score a bunch of points in the NFL. Let's say 35. That's a lot of points in the NFL. But they'll lose 42-35 because there's no defense. He's going back to the same situation. Now, are you saying it's a rebuild? Sure. But how much time are they going to give him because they didn't give Justin Fields the time? You know what I mean? So, and I see you looking up the defense to make sure that their defense is legit or not. But
no, I'm not.
But it's that those are the things that worry me about it. Like, why would I do that? If they do it to Justin Fields, how do I know they won't do it to me? Right? Those are the questions you have to ask yourself. At the end of the day, it's about him setting himself up to be as successful as he possibly can. That's why I said Pittsburgh's a perfect fit, but Pittsburgh already made their move. The Titans might be a good fit. There's a Seattle Seahawks, like me and Jamal talked about. Excellent fit for Caleb Williams. Is that realistic? Will it happen? No. But like Jamal said, back to your question. I went off on a tangent. I apologize. Back to your question. Those might be the only 3 visits. Chicago, DC, and the Vikings. And the Vikings have to give up a whole bunch to get up to where he needs to go. But I wouldn't be surprised if in April Caleb Williams goes and all of a sudden the contract comes around. He's like, I'm not going to the Bears, and pulls the Eli Manning. Won't be surprised about it at all. Jamal, you got any opinion on?
Yeah, I mean, and we talked about this last time, Fred. Yeah. I mean, it's a really nice debate about, look, organizationally versus it's culture versus roster. And culture, this probably isn't the best fit long term, but roster, my goodness, you've got 2 number 1 receivers, you've got a franchise type of running back, and you've got a team coming off of 7 wins. So you're in a situation to be able to win right away. You're in one of the best cities in the country, in Chicago, from a media market standpoint. You're really set up for success in the near term. The question is, does the organization have enough culture and identity to be able to sustain that success? To me, I think, given everything that's happened, a lot of noise, not a great year at SC in terms of the Heisman, comeback type of season, I think it would be hard for him PR-wise to be able to hold out and not go to Chicago. I think privately, him and his team are probably telling the Commanders, listen, all else being equal, we want to come to you guys. If you guys want to get aggressive in terms of being able to get a trade for number 1, like, we're all in for that. But if the Bears do draft us number 1, we're not going to hold out. We're not going to create a whole stir, because I think what it's going to do is it's just going to create even more pressure and take the narratives over before the guy even plays a game. And I think, given how this year sort of played out a little bit, I think his dad, his team are starting to understand, I don't know if we want this sort of undo. There's enough pressure. There's enough expectation. I don't know if we need more of it and to be in a position to sort of alienate him, especially given the fact that he's going to be the face of your franchise as a 21, 22-year-old. So to me, I think that's where the body language kind of came in today. There's sort of much more of an acceptance that, look, if Chicago's the team, Chicago's the team. I didn't really see anything. Now, obviously, it was just a few minutes. He's probably been coached really well, but definitely the tone felt a little bit different than some of the conversations and some of the articles that have been in the past about his relationship relative to Chicago.
Do you think if he's back-to-back Heisman, he has the ability to hold out?
That's a good question. Got a stronger ability. I think it's a great question. I think if he had a really great follow-up season and won another Heisman and SC was in the playoff and potentially winning a national championship, and it was all of this conversation around, man, what a leader he is. Look at how he took a 4-win team the year before they got there, won back-to-back Heismans, multiple playoff wins, possible national championship. He can kind of do what he wants. He wants to go back home. I think there's a very different dynamic versus, hey, this team kind of went 8-5 and already questions of, wow, they had their best performance of the season without him. And so to sort of build upon that, I don't know if this is the wisest move to be able to hold out here.
That's a very good point. You're right. It's just, and he has a lot of, it's interesting because when they post stuff about him and you look at the comments, it's like, I can't wait for him to fail and he's going to be the biggest bust in history. I don't see it. And we all know what his comparison is. His comparison is to the best quarterback in the NFL and probably will be the greatest quarterback in the NFL. And he hasn't even hit his peak yet. So when you're compared to that, it's like, why do you guys want to see this kid fail? Like, you want to see something like that. That's another generation of talent coming to the NFL. And when you look at the NFC North will become really good really fast if everything works out with Caleb, right? You got the Lions here making noise. Green Bay, don't sleep on them. Now you got the Bears making moves to try to keep up. And the Vikings, right? The Vikings are doing whatever they can, scratch and kick. As long as they're competitive, you go have 3 teams coming out of that division each year for the playoffs. So they got really good really fast. And why would you want to see that fail? For the better of the game, you want to see that kid be very good. Think about it. Caleb Williams, Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. That's, you know what I mean? Get your popcorn ready. Like that would be great, right? So, I mean, I think too many people get caught up in the person and not the player, right? And when I say the person and not the player, I don't care how you are off the field. I don't care how you treat other people. It doesn't matter to me. And the reason why is because I don't have to hang out with you or how I don't have to live with you. The only thing that concerns me as watching a football game is how you play. And if you play phenomenally, you're okay in my book. I don't care how you are as a person because I don't need to know you on everyday life. I think too many people get caught up in that, and then they overlook that this dude is being compared to Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is already being called the GOAT, and Tom Brady hasn't even had the crown for a decade yet, and he's already
like
lost
2 years.
it.
Yeah,
He already lost it. So we got somebody else behind him to follow him. So it gets a little crazy in that behind it, but I do wish him the best, and I wish everybody else the best. You guys got anything else on Caleb Williams before we jump to the other guys?
Just to put a bow, I guess, sorry, Jamal, on my question. I was just going to say, realistically.
Sorry about your question, Ryan.
No, you guys answered it all.
Okay.
I was just going to say, realistically, in my opinion, the only team that even has a shot at moving up is Washington. For one, the Bears aren't going to trade their pick to their division rival Vikings and let them go get Caleb Williams. And two, the Bears need a quarterback regardless. So if they drop down to 11, guess what? They can't get one of the top quarterbacks. So Washington's the only one that makes sense. They're not in their division. They are the same conference, but not their division. And they only lose one spot. They still can get, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, or any of the other quarterbacks. So don't see it happening, but I think that's the only one that even has a chance of happening.
And I don't think you need any capital to make that trade because it's just a switch.
They'll ask for another one. I mean, when the Niners, when the Bears jumped the Niners from 3-2 to get good old Mitch Trubisky, they had to give a second first-round pick the following year.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. It's either a swap or we can move on. Jamal, you got anything to wrap this up before we move on to the rest of the
no, I mean, just really good point by Ryan. The one thing I'll say, Coach, is I think a lot of your perception, rightfully, I think has also been framed by the fact that you played. And I think that you have this ability to compartmentalize player from person. I think one of the challenges, right, it's fandom. How many fans get an opportunity to meet their heroes, meet the players that they're following so religiously? But think about how much a player and a team could be part of a superfan's lifestyle. When you talk about how much they read, how much they watch, going to the games, going to the practices, going to events, talking about it with their friends, having, relationships based on it over the course of the week, over the course of the year. So player and person, the mesh of that kind of matters when it comes to a lot of fans. And I think where Caleb has gotten the hate is because there's just a little bit of question around authenticity of the person and just what he sort of is standing behind in terms of sort of personal interest versus team interest. And I think that's also why I think they've gotten a little bit burned from a PR standpoint on the personal side, that I don't know you're going to push as hard here to be able to say, to dictate your terms and go to the Commanders versus the Bears.
Yeah, 100%. So I want to talk about two more players before we wrap this thing up, and we'll save Ryan's favorite for last. Let's talk about Jerry's Boy real quick. Jerry's Boy came out. Jerry's Boy was smart. He did not run. I will tell you this. He measured a 6'2.5". He's 208. He doesn't look 208. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't even look 208 on TV. He weighed in at 208. Shuttle, 4.32. There goes some more explosiveness. His 3-cone, 6.94. So he has burst in him. I just don't think he has that long speed. You know what I mean? Like that. He's a big twitchy guy. You know what I mean? So that's why he had that stat, 5.2 touchdowns or whatever. So Jerry's Boy, how did you guys touch on it real quick? How did he look today, you guys? Ryan, Jamal, go ahead. And then Ryan, you can take over. We'll go to the next.
Yeah, obviously he was sort of Caleb's primary weapon on the deep ball today, and he and Tahj really split a vast majority of the 55 throws with Caleb. He looked really good, as I mentioned earlier. A couple of the balls that were sort of behind him, he made catches, he adjusted, looked really fluid as a route runner. And I think what was really interesting was in the post game, the post pro day interview when there was a lot of conversation. I think we posted some material on LA Football Network when he talked about a question came up. What was it like to be at a place like USC from a wide receiver U standpoint? And he said it was dog eat dog. And that's what has really sort of shaped him into getting ready at the highest level here. And so that competition, that survival of the fittest that he called it, really has sort of set him up for success here. So he looks mentally very ready for the NFL. He physically looks very ready for the NFL, to your point, in terms of just how he looks, his explosiveness. Talked about his father being a great mentor through this process. So there was nothing that sort of jumped off the page today. He did everything right as being a kind of a supporting actor to Caleb, and then also said a lot of the right things after the pro day.
Ryan, got anything?
Yeah, it looked good, looked solid. Obviously, we've talked a lot about his production this year and 12 touchdowns and the improvement year over year from Colorado to USC. I loved his comments about, wide receiver U and dog eat dog, and you could see it come out on the field. I mean, when Dorian Singer transferred in last year, it was like thought, okay, there's your wide receiver one. He dominated the Pac-12. He'll be USC's number one, and clearly was not. And I don't know if I'd necessarily say Brenden Rice was for sure wide receiver one, but you could see that mentality of like just how you have to make a name for yourself in order to, get production on the field. And he was able to put that on tape. And pro day looked good. Didn't do anything to hurt. Didn't do anything to like skyrocket thing. I think we know he's a mid-round pick at this point. Some people think third round, some people think fifth. It's really hard to know exactly where, but I think he's going to be fun. I'm still hoping, as fandom and as for this network, I'm still hoping he ends up in a Rams uniform. I think Rams need an outside receiver. I just think he would fit great.
He's not an outside receiver, though, Ryan. He can't take the top off.
He's an outside receiver. He's not a slot guy.
He's not, but he's not. Oh, well, come on, Ryan. We'll have this conversation another day. But he can't. The Rams need somebody to take the top off. Brenden Rice can't take the top off.
That's what Tutu Atwell's for.
How good is Tutu Atwell for real?
Well, that's why they got him to take the top off.
and guess what? Their top is still on in LA.
Still on.
And 2 years in. But yeah.
That's why they used a second on him.
But
anyway.
But he does fit in Sean McVay's system. But there's already a guy there. I would say more Cooper Kupp. Jamal, you would say is more like Brenden Rice, or is Puka?
I wouldn't go necessarily that far. I think he's sort of a guy that has a little bit more burst than those guys for sure, but he's not Tyreek Hill, not, and few are there. He's not Waddle. What's an interesting comp, I think, to me with Brenden Rice is kind of like a Kyle Pitts, actually, like it in sort of an interesting way. He's a little bit bigger frame, to your point on the 208. But he's sort of athletic for his frame. And so even though Pitts was kind of thought of more as a tight end, but just sort of as an offensive weapon, I actually see him, with some of those instincts a little bit as a very athletic guy for his size, but not necessarily, I agree with you, kind of this ultimate burner.
Well, I even see if we keep it with SC guys, and just I'm not saying the ceiling wise, but I see even like Michael Pittman Jr. Me and Jamal were talking about him a little bit. Also, just a guy that I don't think Pittman is like, when you watch him, he's not like the best at anything, but he's just a damn solid receiver. Like he's just really good. But he's not like a guy like, whoa, 4.3 speed or whoa, but he just does everything really well. And obviously he just got a big contract extension. So I don't think Rice necessarily is at that point yet, but I think he's a guy that just like does things well. Now, can he elevate that? But we'll see.
Yeah, Fred. It's why I had him going to Indy, right?
Show. I was about to say, I'm gonna put you on blast, Ryan. You did not watch our show. You did not watch our show because it
was like an hour 10. It was like an hour 10 last show.
That's your fault. You put me and Jamal together and didn't give us a timeline. So you know how when we had the Christmas party, I think I stayed at Jamal's house at like 1:00 in the morning. We was just chatting it up the whole night.
It was great. It was phenomenal.
You ran the New Year.
Last guy. Ryan's favorite, Taj Washington. Measured bigger than people thought he was. He measured at 5'9". So he's big. He's measured 5'9", 7'8", so he's almost 5'10", 174. The weight's about right. He ran a 5'2", though. 4.22 shuttle, but 6'8", 1.3 cone. Doesn't matter. We know how he could play.
4.52, just in case people are. I don't want people to think he ran a 5'2", 4.52.
No, he ran 4.52. But this is Steve Smith. Doesn't matter. When the clock goes on, we know what he could do. We've seen him play. We've seen him run. I'll throw it to Ryan. Ryan, how'd your man crush do?
Yeah, great. Just he's just solid. He's just a solid guy. Looked good in drills. Looked good. Jamal can talk more about when he's getting thrown to by Caleb, but looked good in drills. And I think the times were kind of what we expected. Sorry, my computer's about to die. There we go. I think the times were kind of what 4.5 seems kind of like the 40 time. I think he plays faster than that. I mean, he's surprised. I think a lot of people this year with being kind of a deep ball guy that we didn't really see in years prior as much. Obviously 2 years ago, Jordan Addison was kind of that guy, so he didn't really have to be, but he had some breakaway speed that we saw often. Jamal and I were at the game in Boulder when he had that 71-yard touchdown, breaking against the back line and whatnot. So he has the ability to do it with the pads on. And so, the 40 time doesn't blow people away, but I think it was a good time for what he is. And then I think the tape shows that he plays a little faster though.
Madman.
Yeah, I mean, I think he did a really nice job today, and I think he looked really fluid in kind of Caleb's throws and that part of the day. There was one ball in particular that he just caught with his hands so beautifully. It was sort of outstretched and used his fingertips, and then also had the presence of mind to stay in bounds and really kind of tiptoed on one of these 20-yard outs. Looked really fluid with his hands. I think that was one area that separated Tahj from Brenden even today, is that Brenden wasn't catching balls particularly cleanly with his hands. There was a lot. He caught everything. Everything was solid, but some of it was kind of, guided with his body. Tahj was catching sort of everything with his hands today. And I think that really stood out. And Tahj was also rather crisp from a route tree standpoint. We saw Tahj running more complex route tree concepts today than even Brenden. Brenden was kind of more of a one cut and go or just a straight go. But it was more kind of a simplified scheme for Brenden than it was for Tahj. So again, I think this lends itself to everything that we've been talking about. He has the ability to find an incredible role as a slot guy with a complex route tree, find a way to get open, and then have kind of that subtle burst to be able to not just be a slot guy that's living in that 10, 12, 14-yard zone, but can sort of blow the top off. And then I think I loved what he said at the end of, hey, what's really the unique skill set that you're bringing to the NFL? And he talked ad nauseum about his toughness and his competitiveness, and that's kind of repeatedly shown up with his blocking ability. So all three of those elements, the ability to get open underneath, the ability to go and stretch the field with, subtle speed, and then his ability to block. I think he's got a much crisper identity at the NFL level than even Brenden Rice does.
Yeah. Go ahead,
Ryan.
Coach.
No, go.
Because I was going to ask another question, so you comment first.
No, my question is best for last, so go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say, not to rehash because you guys talked about it, where did you guys have Tahj going?
I had him going to Baltimore.
Yeah,
Baltimore, that's right, you told me that.
You know where I had Tahj going?
Where?
Chicago.
Okay. That'd be great.
They don't have a slot.
Yeah.
He's the slot receiver that they need.
Yeah. Do they still have Darnell Mooney, or is he a free agent this year?
I don't care. Tahj is better.
Yeah. So Tahj is like, if we're being honest, Tahj is the perfect Rams receiver, but they just already have two of him on their roster.
Two of them,
so
exactly.
They just don't need another one, but he's the perfect. I would love, as a fan, to see him go to Denver. I mean, Denver just traded Jerry Jeudy away. He would fit right in Sean Payton's system. But anyway, go ahead, Coach.
There's also whispers going around the NFL that the Steelers are really interested in Brandon Ayuk. So Tahj might be good in San Francisco.
Don't put that on us.
I'm just saying. I'll tell you guys when we're done because that'll take us down the whole thing. Here's my final question before we wrap it up. And we're plenty of time. You won't get the hook, Ryan. I'll even let you go first. Did anybody's stock go up or drop after today's pro day? Go ahead, Ryan.
Ooh, I think Austin Jones' stock maybe went up a little bit. I think he did some good things. Max Williams, like we talked about, maybe went up a little bit. These are guys obviously that weren't at the combine, so I think those were the only guys that really had a big opportunity. I don't think any of the big names dropped at all. I probably don't think they really went up at all. So I think it was a pretty kind of like what we said with Caleb. It was a good day. It didn't really do a whole lot for a lot of guys, but the guys that weren't at the combine, I think they did elevate a little bit. I don't think anyone across the board, Jamal, you can totally disagree and correct me, but I don't think anyone like hurt their stock per se.
Man.
Yeah, I completely agree, Ryan. I think Jones and Williams probably had the biggest upside here to show an element. I don't think anybody hurt themselves. The one thing I'll say is maybe a missed opportunity would have been for someone like a Calen Bullock. I thought that there was maybe an opportunity to do more there to perhaps solidify his positioning in kind of a higher pick type of standpoint, kind of maybe even solidify himself as a sort of early second, late first type of pick. But it was very kind of conservative in that regard. I think there was kind of an opportunity for Calen Bullock to have some drills out there in terms of his ability to be a ball hawk, and also in particular maybe show something from either a bench perspective or just kind of a toughness perspective to maybe shed that moniker that he struggled in the box, that he struggled with tackling, that he struggled with physicality. But he didn't do it. So, it's a hypothetical, but perhaps a missed opportunity there for a guy that has significant upside.
I will say this. I remember my senior year of high school, the junior day was the combine on a Saturday. And you said there's about 100 people out there. If Lincoln is listening, if you get that many people to watch Pro Day, that's a great recruiting tool. They need to move junior day to Saturday. They need to move Pro Day to a Saturday and make it a part of junior day. And that right there is already a check. Look how many people are coming to watch these dudes become a pro. So just a little thought. But scouts representing all 32 teams attended USC's Pro Day. So every single team in the NFL was there today. There you go. So
it helps when you have the presumptive number one pick in the draft.
Yeah, but like he said,
it doesn't quite happen every year.
he said it doesn't matter. All 32 teams don't need my physical. I'm not going to all 32 teams. Like I agree with him on that, but we'll talk. Well, that's a text talk. You know how they have TED Talks? We have text talks.
we gotta name our text line. We need a sponsor for it, like the bet on the underdog text line or something. Anyway,
that makes sense. Yeah, that's a good idea. I appreciate you guys. Another one in the book. Enjoy your weekends. I don't know what you have planned. Ryan is, I just want to let you guys know, Ryan is the guy, the All-American guy. He always has plans on the weekend. He's never at home. So I don't know what you have planned this weekend, Ryan. I know it's
I got a Mexican wife, so there's always something going on. There's always some birthday happening.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy it. I actually have tickets to the final round for the Hogue Classic in Huntington Beach. So I'm gonna go watch some. I'm gonna go watch my man JD hit a couple of golf shots. So I'm gonna go check that out. Jamal, I don't know what you have planned. You're always on some adventure too.
A little of this, a little of that.
There you go. He's the most mysterious man in the world?
Interesting man in the world.
Most interesting man in the world. Jamal's the most interesting man in the world. He doesn't drink beer, but when he does, he drinks Barg's root beer.
I like that. I was wondering where you were going with that. That's great. That's quite good.
Yeah. I appreciate you. I appreciate you guys, man. Hey, it's so fun. How about we do this again on Monday? How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Sounds good.
We'll continue our draft series. Maybe we'll have some news coming out. There's going to be a lot of rumors floating around. Now
spring practice started.
Spring practice started. We can get into spring practice. When is open for you guys or for us?
Yesterday was the first day, and tomorrow media availability also. Thursday.
Okay. All right. And our shows are normally on Thursday, so that works out. So let's get a couple of reports. There we go. Our boy D'Anton Lynn is getting ready to go. I'm excited to do this. I appreciate you guys going. I appreciate you guys for listening. Small suggestion for you. Throw it on in the car, put it on aux, listen to it during 3:00 traffic. Have us on your commute with you while you're staring at some red lights. I appreciate you guys. As you guys know, this has been the Bet Online Studio Detroit podcast. Live free, fight on.